Hey Brian.
Oh, hey Sandy, how you doing?
Good. Nice to see you finally.
Yeah, yeah, nice to see you in a person digitally.
How's it going this Mother's Day? I know that you're gonna call your mom after this. You
Y-
mentioned that.
Yeah, afterwards I'm gonna call my mom. I'm doing fantastic, by the way. Thank you. Yeah, it's Sunday morning, and I got to sleep in a little bit more, and just ready to roll.
I guess I wanted to give the audience a little background on how we know each other. You have this great Facebook group. Well, you have a blog,
Yeah.
but it's also supported by a closed Facebook group that has, I believe, over 400 members now.
Yep.
And it's very active and it's really supportive. I just happened to be referred to get into the group. Once I was there, I was like, where have I been for so many years? So it's been great, and I want to thank you for that. You're always on, and you're always very active, despite being a busy attorney yourself.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's one of the things I'm proud of. When I first started the Facebook group, I didn't know if it was going to grow or not, but I guess people were interested and people liked it, and I'm really glad that people are supportive of each other there. There's people from California, there's people from all over the country, so despite some of the maybe the differences in the exams, people are very helpful.
So I'll just get into, the questions now. I know you're an efficient guy, and I could tell, but in dealing with you and working with you, you just get to the crux or the heart of the problem
I
for
can also
me.
be very long-winded.
Thanks, Brian. How many times did it take you to pass the bar exam?
So I took it twice, once in 2013 and once in 2014. 2013 July and 2014 February. And then afterwards, I started my blog, which I can tell you about later. And by the way, let me start by saying something that may or may not be obvious about how important it is to pass the bar if you want to be an attorney. Like passing the bar, I think really unlocks new doors for you that you may not have even realized. Like for example, I got offers to work and employment within 2 months of passing. Whereas before I was struggling to get interviews, didn't get any job offers. So it's really a badge that identifies your worth in the legal market, whether you think that's fair or not. Like people are looking at your credentials. So if you've decided you want to pass, then it should be one of your top priorities. It's a few months of paying for the lifetime privilege of calling yourself an attorney.
Okay, I appreciate that. That adds pressure, but it also gives you something I think to look forward to once you do pass, because
Yeah,
I truly think everyone can pass.
yeah, I
I
agree.
gives that kind of that thing to look forward to. You're more eloquent with the words of what I'm trying to say, but
No, that's exactly right. It's a ticket to your free life, and you just got to do it. And pressure is a good thing. It's not something to avoid. It's something that will help you drive toward a thing that you have to earn.
what was your lowest point in bar preparation? Oh, by the way, if I may interject, I started my bar prep journey in July 2013. So I think we were of the same graduating class,
Okay.
and we had our first bar experience that fateful July 2013. You were in San Diego?
I actually took it in. So the first time I took it in Santa Clara, and the second time I took it in Sacramento.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was in Ontario.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, I hadn't moved down to San Diego until I got my current job.
Excellent.
Yeah, I was up in NorCal the whole time.
For people who are interested, what's your alma mater?
So I went to UC Hastings, College of the Law. It's in San Francisco. And by the way, I took the California bar for anyone who's wondering. I don't know who this is being shown to, but this is about I took the California bar. I passed the California bar. But I do talk about other types of bars like the UBE. So yeah, UC Hastings.
Hastings is in the city as well, right?
It is in the city. It's in a region called the Tenderloin, which is like the most dangerous part of the city.
Right.
There's like, apparently there's like gunshots and drug deals everywhere, but I never really saw it because I don't know, no one really paid attention to me like when I was walking around. But yeah, but I think it is near Golden Gate Law School and also maybe one other law school. I can't remember right now. But
I think McGeorge, University of the Pacific, maybe. So I had a friend who's also in San Diego. Shout out to Grace John. I believe she was Hastings class of. She had this story about somebody on the Muni or the bus line. When she would go to Hastings, he would call out cases. He'd know like cases about like I don't know, maybe there were big landmark cases, but Roe v. Wade, but he would help the students and he'd
Okay.
call out cases. Did you ever hear about this Muni driver or?
Oh, it was a Muni driver.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
some, and
uh,
he would call out case thing, and then the passengers would yell out like about the case.
that's the dirtiest thing I've ever heard. But no, I have not heard of that.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And I haven't heard anything about it since, but it could have been so long ago that, he's since
Yeah.
got taken a different route, hopefully some other law school route. What was your lowest point in bar preparation? It must have been during that fateful Thanksgiving,
Yes.
2013 to leading up to the February 14 bar.
You guessed right. It's definitely the moment I realized I failed. I was typing in my information. I kept trying to make sure that I didn't make a typo or anything, just to make sure. But the truth became undeniable, and that was a shock and the lowest point for me. I can't remember thinking that I should give up on the bar though. I was pretty fired up. In fact, I lied down on my bed for like an hour, like shed a couple of tears, and but there was only one way out for me, and that was to pass. And just so you know, my 1L grades were terrible. So I guess I should have expected it somewhat. There's supposed to be some correlation between your academic performance and whether you pass the bar. But I think it's a matter of when you pass the bar. You touched on this earlier, but I think if you can graduate law school, then you have it in you to pass. It's inevitable.
When you said that, it triggered something that I haven't discussed yet. But there's this thing when you fail the bar, at least the way it's set up now, it doesn't tell you you failed. It says one of four things has gone wrong, and maybe you could help me remember the four things. It's totally ambiguous. It says either one, you mistyped your numbers.
Mhm.
Two, I think it even says there's some error in our system or something like that. Three, I can't remember the rest. And I think four, it says you were unsuccessful or something like that. And so you're sitting there on Friday night and you're like double checking, and then you're making sure that you didn't transpose any numbers. And you're like thinking, did I fail? And then, even to tell you the truth, even I had one time where I had that result and I was thinking they could have made a mistake. And Monday I'll get like this opposite letter. And I found some kind of article or a story on Google where this attorney, he thought he failed and he went through the whole weekend, and then he went into work and somebody else looked his number up and he found out he actually passed. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that up, that ambiguous message that you have no idea if you.
Yeah, I don't know if that's their way of letting you down gently or it's their usual way of making everything so like confusing and vague. But yeah, I think that's the screen that I saw. There were like four possibilities, and maybe that's part of why I kept trying to retype my information just to make sure that I didn't make a typo.
I'm sure that's a lot of their traffic after the announcement of the pass list is people rechecking over and over. I'll admit that I've rechecked on Saturday and Sunday as well.
Uh,
But
I may have done that too. I don't remember, but
so there was never a time where you wanted to actually give up and you knew you were going to take February again,
yeah,
correct?
yep.
What was one or more things between the July and the February 14 bar exam that you found really put you over the top? And if you don't mind to add on to that question, how close were you that July 13 that gave you that extra edge to put you past the 1440?
So you're asking what the difference between the points were, I guess, like how far I was from passing.
Right. And then after that, to, not interrupt you again, as I've been doing, but to add on to that, to say made up that spread, bring you over into passing that you feel that was.
So this was before the 50-50 split between the MBE and the essays. So I scored, I think I can bring up my old score here, actually. My scaled written score was 1338. My scaled MBE was 1423, and my total scaled score was 1367.7567. So I was about 80 points away from passing. I have seen people make jumps of 150 points or more. So, don't be discouraged if you get if you have a pretty big spread. I think there is one overarching theme that helped me pass, but there is an article on Bar Exam Toolbox, which no affiliation with except for my guest guest posts. There's one titled Five Things I Did Differently to Pass the Bar the second time around, something like that. I think it's one of the most popular posts on barexamtoolbox.com. So I encourage you to check that out if you want the five things. But what helped me the most was probably listening to myself. So here's what I mean. And this is one of the core messages at Make This Your Last Time. You don't have to follow this preset one size fits all path, given to you by the powers that be above. Like everything else in life, there's no one single proven way or secret trick that you must follow. So think of it this way, someone who's working full time, maybe has a family, while studying is given the exact same very specific structured program as someone, who might be like single, no job, no kids to take care of. And this doesn't really make sense to me. At its core, bar prep is a self-study endeavor, whether you take a course or not. Like in the first place, a bar prep course is just another tool in your arsenal. So what I recommend students to do early on is crafting their own what I call a macro schedule. It takes some time and work upfront to think through this macro schedule. You'll end up feeling less confused or lost and overwhelmed when you create this clear path going forward. And more specifically, this macro schedule is a flexible plan based on what you need, not what others like tell you need. And best of all, this is like a flexible, malleable guide for yourself. You can change it to fit your own needs, you fit your own situation as it changes and develops and needs updates. And Sandy, your listeners can probably, if they want to know more about it, they can read more on my blog by searching for, I think, how to craft your own study schedule. I think that's the title or something like that. And this is also an important early step in my self-study guide. Pastor's Playbook 2.0. So people have to realize the thousands of dollars that they invest in a bar prep program were probably made out of fear. There's a lot of fear mongering going around in the bar prep industry, and these dollars somehow justify like this vague guarantee of, oh, you'll pass, or you can retake with us even though it didn't help the first time. And there's also these like all these overwhelming lectures that no one listens to anyway. Like you forget 99% of what you listen to in the lectures. Like you can't remember most of it anyway. So at least personally, I didn't watch the lectures anymore the second time. I'm one of those people who have a hard time falling asleep, and these lectures were like NyQuil for me. God damn! Just because it's serious doesn't mean it can't be fun either.
I saw that I don't know if you took the B word in bar prep, but I actually liked some of the speakers a lot, and I could tell why the B company got these speakers, like the property, that Italian lady, I think she was.
Yeah, I mean, I used two different companies. So the first time I took one company, it's not the B company. I took one of the other big companies the first time, and then I used old materials of the other big company. It's the B company for the second time. I didn't take any courses. And by B company, I don't mean the small B company. It's the biggest B company.
Sure.
Along with some other supplements. And not to say the first company doesn't work, but I personally wouldn't, go with them for anything else again.
Okay. Do you think that may have confused you by doing two different companies?
No, I don't think so. There's a lot of overlap, but there are things that don't overlap, and learning the things that are kind of not overlapping, I think actually helped me. And I didn't like the first company, and I think the second company kind of overrode all my grievances about the first company. I mean, I couldn't really remember the first time I did it that much, so I was basically relearning everything. So there wasn't really much of an influence by the first company. Just
Okay.
it just left a bad taste in my mouth personally.
I'm just wondering about that because I think we've all been in a situation where people want to hand over some bar materials that they're done with, and I just wanted to get your take for the listeners on how effective that is or ineffective that is. Is there any other things that you wanted to touch upon before I interrupt you again about either the five things that helped you pass this time or anything at all?
Well, regarding the passing along the old materials from your friends or whatever, I think that's sufficient. The reason bar prep courses are expensive are lectures, like marketing, things like that. I think that adds a lot of perceived value. But at least for me, I learn best by reading and doing. So, if you're like a listener or a watcher, then maybe the lectures will help. But I think if you just have have, like an outline, maybe like one of their essay books or like their performance test books. Like just having their written materials is, probably enough. You just have to use them. I feel like lectures are just a way to involve yourself in passive learning, which doesn't really, I think it's a waste of time.
Okay.
That's actually one of the five things article that I mentioned earlier.
In passive versus active learning.
I don't use the word passive learning versus active learning. I just straight up say lectures are worthless. So if you want to learn more about it, just check out the article. Just Google it.
So I'd like to break it up into two things, and I'll just ask you them both at the same time so I can give you a longer thing before I interrupt you again.
Okay.
What did you do while waiting for a result for July 13, where you ultimately didn't pass? And so you must have been up in Northern California.
Yep.
And then while you were waiting for results, and again, you were still probably in Northern California, February 2014, and then you did pass. I would like to know what you did during that time for waiting to pass. Did it mitigate any of your anxiety, the pressure? I know you said pressures can be a good thing too, but
There's always a cycle of, you take the bar and then you're happy and then you're like kind of bored in the middle. And then in the last week or two, you just get all this agony like bubbling up within you. So that's normal for everyone. I don't think that's really a good thing. What I did while waiting for results the first time, I worked at this small company for $15 an hour as a patent clerk. And I think it's important to just not do something. You have to look ahead of this huge immediate goal of, oh, I need to pass the bar. And you just keep implementing a plan that sets you up for future success, like for when you do pass the bar. In my case, I actually needed to overcome my low GPA and I didn't have the right undergrad degree that firms were looking for in a patent prosecutor. I wanted to make that up with experience. And, sometimes I call this the next year plus one approach, where you imagine what you're going to be doing in 1 year from today and then another year after that. So it's not too far off that you have no idea what you're going to do, but now you can kind of work backwards to come up with what you should be doing on your way there. And as for the second time I was waiting for results, same thing as before, working at the same place. And the second time I was less certain that I passed because the first time I didn't know what I didn't know, which is a dangerous state to be in. It was ignorance about my own fate. I was just kind of going with the flow, just going through the motions, just assuming I was going to pass like everyone else. And I think that was kind of arrogant. I wasn't very conscientious about the whole thing. The potential that I failed a second time it was just kind of hanging in the air. It was palpable. It's even worse than failing once. So the second time, I was very aware of the consequences, and that was that haunted me. So I had even more of a reason to keep on building my resume to productively fill in the time and fill in the gap.
it dawned on me that you must have taken the patent bar as well. And
Yeah.
when was that? How long after? So the results around Mother's Day in 2014. How long after did you pursue the patent bar?
So I actually studied for it way before that during my 1L summer while I was in parallel with the internship that I was doing in 1L. And I took it in the beginning of 2L and then I passed then. So
Oh, wow.
I was admitted to represent people at the patent office back in like 2011 or something. And, that kind of leads me to the whole thing about gaining experience. I actually got my own client when I was as a 3L. And, I was doing work directly with a client the whole time. And that client actually became one of our firm clients. Not our favorite client, but he did become our client. We got him a patent, so I'm happy about that. It's the first real patent application that I ever wrote, and it became a patent. So that was a highlight for me as well.
So you brought business to your firm way back when you planted the so-called seed, the patent seed in 1 and 2L during law school. Now that's a great employee to have that will reach that far back to bring your business.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go off track, but for when your listeners do become employed or something, I think it's important to act as if you're going to be a partner one day, if that is in fact your goal. So just because you're like a first year associate doesn't mean you can't do what the partners are doing also. So it's not like I planned for clients to come come back to me after like 5 years. But if you're like planting different seeds, like some of these may lead to something else, and so on. And I actually ended up. So earlier I mentioned that I was working for a small company. That company also is a current firm client now. So keep up your relationships, keep networking, and see where that goes.
Did you have any negative family members? Our first guest, Eddie's son, the Asian kind of problem with or pressure from Asian parents. So I'm not saying anything further on that. Maybe just setting your mindset for this question is: did you have any negative family members, loved ones, and how did you cope with that negativity, if there was any?
So probably not in the way you're thinking. Like they didn't like slave drive me to like, study and pass. Like they actually didn't put that much pressure on me. So before I get to that, well, maybe I'll skip this one. I was just gonna say like some negative things about my dad, but maybe I'll skip that.
That'll be for your autobiography or your biography on growing up as Brian Hahn.
No, this was actually okay. I'll let you know. So this is one of my most interesting stories in my adult life. Christmas morning of 2013. I was doing MBA problems. Christmas morning, and my dad got super angry for some reason at my mom and my sister, unrelated to me, by the way. Just letting you know. And he just went off and he like left the house for most of the day, and it was just super awkward. But in terms of negativity, in terms of the bar prep, most of that came from myself. So I mostly felt immense guilt over not passing the first time like I was supposed to. Like most of my classmates had passed, and I felt like I was behind or not capable, not competent. So the one beating me up was myself. And I suspect this might be true for many people out there as well. But in the end, I learned to manage my thoughts and my emotions. My mom did tell me after that I seemed happier the second time studying. Probably because I was no longer listening to the worst lectures in the world and wanting to throw myself out a window with the first company that I mentioned.
And you had that drive this time and that focus that you knew what you were doing was a lot better than last time. So that you use that kind of momentum or that positivity in your favor, correct?
Yeah, so I was no longer being pulled around by whatever they were telling me to do. I identified what was most important and focused on that. So that actually lowered the stress, and I was actually a little bit more relaxed the second time around because bar courses can be pretty overwhelming. They give you all these things to do and they tell you what you need to do. But I was kind of driving my own program. Yeah, I was just kind of doing my own thing and just focusing on what's important.
Excellent. This is more of an open thing, but is there anything you want to say for someone studying for this next bar examination? I plan to kind of re-release this every bar study period,
Okay.
so we'll leave it open. But this next bar exam that's coming up, is there?
Well, I have a lot to say. You'll notice if you've been on my blog, I try to stuff everything into each blog or email, and that sometimes makes people dip out, which is fine. I accept that. So let me say this. It might be a little bit controversial. The bar exam is actually pretty simple. I'm not saying it's easy by any means, especially if you've never taken one before, or if you have taken one before even. But it's pretty much a glorified, mega final exam. It's also an exam that tests how to pass the exam. In other words, preparing for the bar is a skill that you can acquire. It takes hard work, yeah, but it's also about being strategic and smart with your work. And most of all, it's about being a good preparer. Most of the work is done before you even set foot in the exam room. It's not about just memorizing rules because that's table stakes. Everyone is doing it. You need to do that. That's just minimum requirement, like just the cost of entry. You'll have to prove your ability to learn and your ability to prepare something with high stakes. And this is fair because that's what lawyers do. Being a lawyer means you become a professional preparer, professional writer, and a professional learner. You're going to be learning new things all the time. And, I know it can be, very frustrating and unclear and unfair. There are people with street smarts and the heart who don't pass the bar. And then there are times when you look at that guy and like, how did he pass? Like, how did that happen, which may give you some hope in the end though. This isn't something that's reliant on some kind of inherent trait. You don't have to be like a naturally good test taker or a natural lawyer type person. Like being a good lawyer is independent of how many times you take the bar or whether you're a good person or whatnot. But at the end of the day, ultimately you still need to pass, and that's what matters. And that's why I'm here. So if you want to pass the bar, it's a matter of studying the exam and not just the law, and studying to learn, not studying just to go through the motions. And that's a mistake I made the first time. And like anything else that you learn in your life, you just need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable for a while, not knowing what to do, getting lost a little bit. And that struggle is kind of what helps you improve. And how you're going to confront your anxiety, your frustration, your overwhelm, your lack of motivation, the psychological part is like at least as important as the other stuff that you're usually worried about. And and by the way, my answer to how to get motivated, my answer is to just do it. Just start first, and the momentum to continue comes afterwards. And just starting is the hard part. And if the bar is important enough to you, then you'll make the time and you'll figure it out, because you can figure anything out if you want to. And I probably talked long enough. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Something that you said triggered something that I just heard this weekend. So, we were talking about different types of learning. I think you are not so much of a visual auditory learner like I am. So I love podcasts and stuff. I listen to Mark Garagos, who is celebrity criminal defense attorney. And if you look in Forbes top, highest paid attorneys in America, he's number 3. At least he was a few years ago. Super attorney, Mark Garagos. And he does this show, a legal commentary show with Adam Carolla, comedian. And he said just on yesterday's podcast he said that the types of attorneys he looks for is not necessarily first timers that can write a great analysis, but he said what impresses him more is the type of attorney or test taker that puts themselves on the other side of what the bar examiner can ask.
Yeah.
So I think in bar study, if you can have that at least in the back of your mind, if not forefront of your mind, in how would the bar examiners ask me this, and to take note of bar prompts or essay prompts and multiple choice questions that you see that they're asking you and they're only asking you one way. I really think that's important. And apparently Mark Garagos does as well, because he says he builds that into his hiring process.
Okay.
I'm going to timestamp and put a link, that little snippet where he says that.
Sure.
And it just was kind of an epiphany or something that I really smiled at when I heard him say that. Go
Yeah, if
ahead.
I can add to that, I think that's exactly right. The bar might be a test in empathy as well. The bar graders end up with like a stack of thousands of essay exams that they have to read and grade. Like if you think about the grader, if you care about them, then I think you'll have a better chance of getting, a little extra points here and there. For example, I do talk about making your writing easy to read. Like if it's hard to read, it's not going to be easy to grade, and there's not going to be any reason for them to give you points. So things you could do are clearly identifying the issues, maybe like bolding them or underlining them. Not writing these giant paragraphs that some people tend to write. Don't do that. Break it up into smaller pieces. A good way to do it is, IRAC issue rule. Rule should be one paragraph. Application should be another paragraph. You can break that up into multiple paragraphs if you want, and just making it clean, just making it easy to read. I think that's probably one reason that I do like the B course, because a lot of people are taking that one, so a lot of the rules will look the same. Like you don't want to stick out in a weird way where you're like, I've never seen this rule statement before. Like, don't make the grader do extra work. Just get in, get the points, and get out. Make the grader's life as easy as possible. Don't give him any reasons to take away points or not give you points.
Excellent. We'll wrap this up. I appreciate you being so salient and efficient in this interview, and just the way you are. Is there anything that you want to plug? I guess we should talk about your blog, and I'll put that in the notes, and also your website, and also your email, Brian at make this your last time.
Yep. .com.
I'm sure you're open to any emails.
Yeah. I read all emails. I respond to most of them. And if your listeners are interested in learning more about these substantive preparation strategies, they can check out makethisyourlasttime.com. That's 20 letters. Sometimes people say like make it your last time, make that your last time, whatever. But it's makethisyourlasttime.com. They can find coupons like freebies, recommended resources, strategies. And I also recommend that they sign up for my weekly emails, which I think are pretty good. They'll get a free performance test guide for signing up. And I sometimes talk about, strategies that I don't talk about on the blog. So might as well just sign up. You can just unsubscribe anytime. And one last thing I want to mention, I touched on this earlier. Without the proper mental models in place, it's hard to even sit down and begin to focus on doing the work, like doing a practice problem, for example. To that end, I am working on a new product called Mental Engines, which addresses the mental psychological aspects of bar prep. And the best way to find out about, early access updates and a public launch coming hopefully pretty soon is to stay on my email list.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your Sunday, and
I hope it helps everyone, and have a good rest of your Sunday.
I'll be in touch as usual.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay. Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Because she passed the uniform practice, she can go get admitted in 18 other jurisdictions. I like one who can say, okay, I know this fact pattern. I know what they're looking for. They're smart enough to game it out. So that kind of intelligence I'll take. If they say, okay, I know that this is what the examiner is thinking, and the examiner, they've got a psychology as to the test and how it was written. That's fine. But somebody who just goes to it and is not thinking at that level, but is just thinking or doing the analysis and saying, oh, A, I'm eliminating because blah, 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 and B, I'm eliminating because of blah, 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 because it's based on legal principles, that's not exactly the kind of brain that's going to lead you to great success in a courtroom.
So back to Avenatti, which is